when found footage is done well, it feels like you're watching real people in real situations. And that means that there's real stakes.
It's subversive. Anything can happen.
You don't really know what you're going to see next.
You know, now everyone has cameras in their pockets, right? We live in a world that is found footage.
We've always told each other stories that are, this is real, this has happened to me.
These films were seen as really subpar and underground and grimy.
You're sucked into that hyper-realism and the normal people going through this extraordinary circumstance. You want to believe that that's actually happened.
From the historic Haunted Heartland in Omaha, Nebraska, my name is Brian J. Corey, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all, young and old, to this episode of the Necronomicast, the finest in creepy conversations. My guests tonight for a late night conversation is the filmmaking team of Sarah Appleton and Phillip Escott. They are the creative force behind the new documentary premiering on Shudder this week entitled The Found Footage Phenomenon. Join us as we discuss the highly profitable yet wildly misunderstood genre of horror movies that generated such box office hits like the Blair Witch Project, Afflicted, and the Paranormal Activity franchise. The Found Footage Phenomenon on the Necronomicast. And now calling in on the Necronomicast hotline, I'm so excited to have Sarah Appleton and Phillip Escott on the line from the UK. Guys, it's so great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Brian.
I was really excited when I was going through the internet news sites for horror movies and everything, and I saw an advertisement or a news release for the found footage phenomenon, which I didn't know that this was coming or a thing in production. I was really excited, and then I saw that it was coming out on Shudder here in the United States, May 19th, and I was like, oh, this is totally up my alley. Very excited to watch it. I'm so thankful you guys sent me the screener to watch it, and to have the directors and the writers, the guys behind this documentary on my show. What an honor and a treat.
That was very kind, sir.
Yes, it's always good to meet a fellow found footage fan, so thank you.
I know, we're an odd lot. So not only the guys that like to enjoy these movies like me, but you guys put together this hour and 40-minute wonderful documentary, so full of information. I was kind of just talking small talk before we hit record with Sarah. I was so impressed with the show because I think I know a lot about horror movies and I've seen a lot of found footage movies and I consider myself an aficionado, but to watch this hour and 40-minute documentary just talking about the history of found footage and how the major players kind of got involved with making these movies. What a treat. What a great piece of work you guys put together.
Thank you. That's so nice for you to say. Yeah, it's always nice to hear that we actually created something that taught someone something, especially fans, you know, because generally fans of things have already seen everything, like you say.
Indeed.
When you're putting something together like this, like what was the inciting incident? What led you guys down this road? Like, yeah, we're really into found footage horror, found footage movies. Let's dedicate this chunk of our lives to making this documentary. What was behind all that?
Well, to be honest, Sarah is the bigger found footage fan of the two of us, but I'm a history sort of nerd as well as a horror nerd. So for me, the idea of going back and exploring where this genre came from is what appealed to me. And I was working on the release of Lake Mungo that came out recently by Second Sight Films, as my day job is a producer for them. And Sarah is a huge found footage fan, so she found out I was working on it, messaged me to say, oh my God, I need to help out on this release. It's an amazing film. I love it. Let's make a documentary about found footage for this release. And I was like, dude, that's a great idea. But unfortunately, the disc is already signed off. Everything's done. And regardless, that's an insanely good idea. Let's think bigger. Let's look at doing something, that doesn't belong on an extra feature for a Blu-ray. Let's think outside the box here and think bigger.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, I always wanted, for years, I wanted to make this documentary, but you can't just do it. You have to have a good reason. And so I'm sitting there waiting for someone to release a found footage film so I could be like, can I make a documentary about found footage, please? And then Phil was like, no. So kind of, oh no, well, we might as well just do it, on our own. And so we did. It was great.
So horror fans like me, I really thought found footage was kind of a new thing, like in the 90s, of course, with Blair Witch Project, movies like that, Paranormal Activity, which came out, in the 2000s. But I was really surprised, and it really opened my eyes when you guys had the concept of found footage really beginning like with Orson Welles and War of the Worlds in that radio broadcast from 1938. And that opened my eyes to thinking about the different examples of precursors to found footage, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, as a novel written as, Parker's letters being found. It was just really interesting, like tracing the roots of found footage way before those guys in Massachusetts were wandering around looking for the witch and collecting, stick figures. Like it has a long history building up to what we consider a found footage show.
Yeah, for me, found footage isn't just like a film where you find a tape and someone finds a tape and you watch it and all the stuff's on it. It's more about realism and like how you're led to believe that what you're watching is real, and any sort of format that takes, whether you're finding a journal or you're finding a tape or you're watching a Zoom that someone recorded, all of that I think counts as found footage really in my book.
Yeah, and there's nothing new under the sun, I guess. So it was interesting to sort of go back and see like, how did we get to here? And so, just doing a little digging. I found that a lot of fun, and it does open your eyes to see how long this has been going on for.
Sure. And then like you even traced the roots going through the 60s with movies like Peeping Tom, which I've never heard of. So
what?
I know. See, like
it's a British thing. If you say that to a British person, like I've never seen Peeping Tom, that's like saying I've never seen Psycho. You get slapped in the face.
Yeah, it's the exact same year as Psycho. So here, everyone's like Peeping Tom and Psycho. They come hand in hand,
And that just shows the deficiencies that I have as a horror movie fan, and that's why it's a lifelong pursuit, because it took me this long, 46 years, to figure out that there was a movie called Peeping Tom and how important it was to the genre of found footage.
Sorry, yeah, it's so important to slashers as well, and like the whole horror genre as a whole. Like, no, sorry, not to rub it in, but it's like a proto slasher movie and in the same ilk as sort of Psycho. So yeah,
it was reviled for being too violent as well, wasn't it? So it was one of those films that it turned a lot of people off for being too extreme.
Yeah, it killed Michael Powell's career. So to a degree.
That's why these conversations are so important to a horror fan like me, because here I am here in America thinking I know everything like most Americans do, and something like Peeping Tom comes up that shows me that I have a lot of work to do when I say that I'm a horror fan. What does that really mean? Well, I need to go across the ocean and start watching more films that were produced over there and are produced over there. And like David Holzman's Diary, there's another one. All these movies like from the 60s. And then later we'll get into things like Cannibal Holocaust, which I have watched before I watched the show. So I wasn't totally deficient in everything. But like, I got to hand it to you, like how important it is for horror fans before you start dismissing something like a found footage film to really know what a found footage film is, its history, and what led up to what we take for granted now.
Yeah, the thing about David Holzman's Diary actually is something that I don't know about Phil, but I'm pretty sure neither of us knew about before we started making the film, and it was only when two different interviewees, Patrick and Lance, I think, mentioned it as one of their early inspirations because they watched it in like film school or something. It's just something that we didn't get over here, and so in that sense, it's like Peeping Tom, but for us.
yeah, that came out through the interviewees. It was like, what is this film they're talking about? We Googled it. It's quite hard to find, but yeah, when you see it, it's like, wow, yeah, it's like a dude just going around filming his day to day. It's like, yeah, that is totally found footage, even though it was built as like avant-garde back then. It's like, no, avant-garde's kind of evolved into something else now.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see just how important that sort of mentality was to low budget filmmakers.
Sure. When you guys were putting this together and you decide, Sarah, Philip, we're going to put together a documentary. How do you begin? Like, what did you just start with like a spreadsheet? Let's start listing all the movies, then contacting people, or did you just kind of organically put it together, or how did you put it together? This found footage phenomenon documentary.
So we knocked up a spine, if you will, like a backbone that just chronicled where we wanted to go, like the topics we wanted to hit, the films we needed to hit. And then from there, it was, well, we want to talk about these films. We need to speak to these filmmakers. And so it was just a lot of back and forth between us deciding what film had more impact on the subgenre than others, because there are so many films that we'd like to include and talk about, but some of them just didn't advance the genre as much as others. And so it was, just a whole lot of nitpicking.
Some people really think that you have to plan a documentary like all the way through at the beginning. And I think that if you're going to do that, you might as well write a book. The whole interesting aspect of it is it's interviewing all these different people from all the different perspectives on it and them creating the story. And as long as you have to have a backbone, obviously, otherwise you don't know what to ask. But it's all a big learning experience and like a collaboration with everyone. And that's why it's so interesting to do.
I'm sure when you're putting a documentary like that together, I've talked to documentary filmmakers that work with true crime, and I always ask them kind of a similar question. You know, when they're putting something together and they have a list of interviewees and topics that they want to cover, sometimes when you're talking to somebody and interviewing them, you might go down a different road or a rabbit hole, or you might go down a avenue that you didn't know that you were going to go down, and you have new information and like, how are we going to, flesh this out or cover this, or we should explore this. Did you have any other revelations when you're interviewing these directors and movie makers and fans? When you're putting all this together, did you have a happy surprise when you were putting it together? Like, oh, we need to stop what we're doing and cover this now.
I think I'm struggling to think of exact examples, but I think that a few films, particularly the inspirations from some of the directors, were things that we hadn't considered. I mean, I personally didn't know that Ed Sanchez from the Blair Witch was inspired by Legend of Boggy Creek, which is something that I didn't know about before, because it's more of an American thing about Bigfoot, right? Mm-hmm. But so something like that, which then you have to sort of go back and watch that and then see where that fits. But even Phil, saying that the roots of mockumentary and things like Spinal Tap and stuff, for me, is something that I didn't even really consider before. So,
yeah, and it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because in the little spine / backbone, I was like, we need to cover all the 80s comedies that was dealing with this sort of format. And then when you're discussing a subgenre of horror, it's why are we talking about 80s comedies all of a sudden? So you start off talking about these films, and in the edit, it's this doesn't belong here. Get rid of it. So I guess we started off going down rabbit holes, and realized we need to get out the rabbit holes and get onto the main path.
Yeah.
Sure. I remember going to college in the late 90s and seeing all this talk about the Blair Witch Project, and some people were really confused. Is this real? Is this was this really people that went out and then later they found their tapes? So there is a lot of with the marketing of it. You mentioned mockumentary a second ago, and like Spinal Tap, a comedy, but there's these mockumentaries too, where you're kind of led down the road that it could be real. It might be real, it's perceived to be real. and how that goes hand in hand with true, I guess you would call just discovered footage, found footage, point of view cinema.
Yeah, I personally think that they are the same in the sense, obviously they're very different, but they have the same point. They're trying to do the same thing, which is to make you believe what you're watching. And so I don't really think there's any point in separating them out, say Lake Mungo is a mockumentary, not found footage, and then say, because you've got a lot of films that sort of cross the line. I feel like something like Troll Hunter, when you've got documentary crew, and then you find their footage, that's not a mockumentary because it's a documentary crew, but the thing it's not whole yet. I don't know. There's where's the line? So I think that it all just included in one thing together, really.
Yeah, and I think the marketing of Blair Witch is another reason why that film felt so real, because even as a teenager, I was like, that film's not real. That's bullshit. But then you go online, because everyone believes what's on the internet, especially in the 90s. Like, no one believes the internet anymore, right? But back in the 90s, when we were gullible, it was like, what the hell is this? Like, there's a whole different side of the story just here online. So it's like they just carried over the myth. They kept building on the world. And it's like, this could be real, because they were interviewing like random people. It's like, yeah, we haven't seen those guys for so long. It's so strange. It's like, wow, okay, all this is fake, but yeah, I believed it.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. And, back then, like, that was a new kind of concept, even though like I said, your documentary kind of goes through and talks about the history of what led up to that. But when Blair Witch came out, that was a real new thing. It was like guerrilla filmmaking. It looked low budget, on the cheap, kind of like Paranormal Activity, which came out, years later. But that style of mockumentary, or kind of hoodwinking the audience. Now, you guys are no stranger. It's in your show, but I'm sure you guys knew all about beforehand Ghost Watch. That was produced by the BBC. I discovered Ghost Watch just a couple years ago, and thought, wow, that's really, it was so creative and out there. And much like War of the Worlds, there was some panic when that was broadcast. Ghost Watch. Tell us a little bit about Ghost Watch for my listeners that aren't familiar. Yeah,
I think it's a very a traditional British thing to do, is clutch your pearls when something comes on TV that's shocking or on the radio. And that was what happened with Ghost Watch, which, to Leslie Manning and Stephen Volk's great credit, they duped the entire nation by getting one of their most loved TV presenters, which is Michael Parkinson, to go on a show and say, right then, we're at a haunted house. And why wouldn't you believe Michael Parkinson? I mean, why wouldn't you? He's like the nation's hero. And here he is telling you he has a film crew at a haunted house, and these terrified children are in fear of this ghost that lives in their bedroom in the pipes. And it's like, dude, that is just masochistic and horrible, but I love it. Like, you sadists, what are you doing to the poor nation? And yeah, the way they filmed it and did it, it was like, yeah, this could have been a live broadcast. And if I was older, I wouldn't have fallen for it. But my uncle, he was much older than me and a mean bastard. He was like, we need to watch this. And so we watched it, and it terrified the hell out of me. And it's one of those experiences that you will not get over. If you're at the ripe age, which I was, of 11, it's like, no, that's going to scar you for life. And it did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say the best thing about it, I think, not the best thing, there's loads of great things about it, but they managed to create something like found footage, but with recognizable actors, which I feel like just you can't do in any other way. So that, except like a live TV broadcast where you recognize the people. Because if you use an actor like Jake Gyllenhaal, in End of Watch, you recognize him as an actor. This doesn't make any sense. But with this, it was TV presenters like Sarah Green that people were used to seeing all the time. So it really did trick people's brains in that way.
Yeah, ironically, the realism made it real, whereas nowadays you just couldn't do it. But everyone knows, like, yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal isn't a policeman for the LAPD. Like, no, he's an actor. But if you had him playing himself, like chaperoning a police officer and shit goes wrong might work. But yeah, it all depends on how you handle the star power.
Like you said, they were respected people in the UK and, trusted news source. And then for like, if you're just walking home from work, you just come home and you turn on the telly and you see what's going on. Ghost Watch is being presented on TV and you're just kind of reacting to your day and you see it, that would shock people. And to have people call the BBC and to complain or to be worried or to be shocked or it's incredible. I love how sometimes that something like a found footage film that's done well and creative and a little bit different can, evoke that fear or that hysteria or a little bit of that chaos, even just for a little bit, until people figure it out. It's to a filmmaker's credit, I think.
Paranormal Activity did it as well. Because when that came out, I was in my 20s, and even I was like watching it, "Ooh, I don't like this." Like those horrible static shots at night and just the blanket moving. It's like, "Ooh, ooh."
You did not believe Paranormal Activity, did you?
No, but deep down I was like, that could be real. Like, what? Maybe my blanket moves at night.
Well, what's neat about Paranormal Activity, and there's a show here that's broadcast in the United States. I think there's something similar in the UK, but here it's called Paranormal Caught on Camera. And it's experts, like a panel of experts, and they show them clips that viewers or people have sent in of perceived paranormal activity. Like you said, like the sheets moving in the bed, or somebody's. I saw one the other day. Their pigtail, their pigtail in their hair got pulled when they're asleep. Just weird things like that. So the way Paranormal Activity, the film, was put together, very low key, low budget, static camera, just showing this activity, and it's creepy as hell. Whether or not you believe it or not, whatever, it with those unknown actors who did such a good job, it just had that sense of dread, which again, to the filmmaker's credit, to take something so simple, but yet so, it's a fear that a lot of people share. Like you think you're asleep in your bed and you're safe, but things you can't see, things you barely hear, you don't even notice they're watching you asleep. I think it's a universal fear.
And as a horror fan myself, and I think that's why the genre has so much love within the community, is I want to believe, Sarah. I want to believe it's happening. I want to believe that there's a ghost in my house yanking my hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did have a really great suspense, because you do find yourself, I don't know, for me, I felt like just the whole time you think something's going to jump out. And I grew up with these internet videos where you watch the YouTube videos and it's just this car trickling along a mountain and then, some face jumps up at you. So
right.
The whole time we're watching the camera in the bedroom for minutes on end, you're like, what's going to jump in front of it?
So what was like, you guys are watching found footage films and horror films, like what was the one that you watched and you're like, wow, that, to have that spirit in you to make a documentary, to showcase all these films and filmmakers and the history of the cinema genre? What was it that like grabbed your attention, that like made you dedicate this creative output to that?
At this stage, I feel like it's quite hard to remember like the first one I saw or anything like that. But I do remember being at Fright Fest in 2013, I think it was, maybe it was the year before, and seeing Frankenstein's Army. And I always talk about this film, no one's seen it, but I love it. And I thought that because they use these practical effects with these monsters and they all look really creative, kind of scary monsters, and then you've got these long takes with these monsters jumping out at you all the time. I just thought it was great, and I was just watching that thinking, wow, this guy is really talented at making a film that is presenting as just one long sort of take, because it's set in World War II as well, so like an alternative World War II where there's a Frankenstein's cave where he's building monsters. But there's a guy from, I think, like Rolling Stone magazine or something, following them around with an original sort of Super 8 camera or something, maybe I don't know, what it was, but an old-fashioned camera. And so, because there was only one camera, it's much more difficult to create. You don't have a chance to cut to another camera and things like that. So it's that sort of thing that made me realize how difficult it was to make a found footage film, and that it's not just this easy thing that people kind of think it is.
Movies that I kind of latched on to, obviously we talked about Blair Witch. I thought that was super interesting. Paranormal Activity. I remember the first time I saw that in the theater at night with some of my friends. And I mean, obviously I knew it wasn't real, but just the way that it was portrayed and the time of night, and I probably had a couple beers in me. When I got home that night, my wife was asleep, kids were asleep. I had trouble going to bed when I got home. Like, I was just thinking about it. And then here I am laying in bed, and I'm just like wondering, if I go to sleep, is something watching me? Are my sheets going to be, so it planted that seed of discomfort in me, which I think is a good sign of an effective filmmaker or an effective film.
And yeah, like I mentioned, Paranormal Activity did a number on me as well, even though I know it's all false, obviously, but it's that thing in the back of your head as a horror fan. It's like when you see something that fantastic, you want to believe it. Like, I remember seeing Wreck when that came out, and that's about zombies or possessed people. But even though I know that could never happen, I wanted it to happen. Purely because the film was so well executed. Like, I believe that this news crew was here following this group of firemen for some reason, because that's what documentary and news teams do, right? They follow firemen for some reason. And then, yeah, you just have the news report from hell. It's like, okay, we just turned up to this apartment now, and it's covered by what appear to be zombies. Obviously, they turn out to be possessed people, but...
Don't give it away.
Oh, come on. It's like, it's been remade now. Everyone's seen it. So, spoiler alert. Sorry.
Right. Spoilers over like a decade-old movie, sure. One thing that is cool about having a podcast, I've interviewed some different filmmakers, and one in particular was David Bruckner. David Bruckner has made a couple films since, but he worked on VHS, which is a kind of a found footage anthology movie. And talking to him, and I hear it echoed in some of your interviews, one thing David Bruckner was talking about is you always got to coax the viewer into believing the scenario and why they keep filming, or why the camera is rolling, or how did they get themselves in this predicament where there is this footage to be found or footage to be viewed later. And it's interesting to hear, almost to a person, all the filmmakers, directors, writers were talking about how they had to work or craft the narrative of why are we watching this, or why did they keep filming? So there's a lot more thought that's put into these films, and I think the average moviegoer gives credit toward, and it's a credit to the creative thoughts of the filmmakers.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we wanted to make the documentary, really, because a lot of people, kind of don't like found footage films and say, oh, it's just shaky cam, it's so easy to make, anyone can pick up a camera and make it. But just because anyone can pick up a camera and make a film doesn't mean that they should, and it doesn't mean that they can make a good film. There's plenty of bad ones where people have sort of thought, oh, just pick up a camera and point it at stuff. It is really intricate, and you do have to plan everything. Otherwise, faking reality is possibly the hardest thing, I think. Yeah,
as soon as you lose the audience in that regard, the game's over. You're just going to zone out. And so keeping everyone on that thread is incredibly hard.
Sure. One movie that you guys highlight often in your documentary is Afflicted. And when I'm a host of this podcast now, but about 8 years ago, I was a guest on this podcast. My friends were the hosts, and they invited me on because I thought I knew a lot about horror movies. I got a lot more British horror movies to watch, I guess. But they had me on, and one of the first things we talked about as horror fans was Afflicted. And so that it's kind of got a special spot in my heart, because that was like the first movie we talked about as a team on this program. So I was really happy to see it featured heavily, and you had great interviews with the creator of Afflicted, the vampire film, which I think is a great example of a found footage film. I think everything about it, the way it was shot, it's creative. I think the acting is great. The story is makes horror movie sense, I guess you could say. You know, these guys were going out on vacation and they were going to document this trip, and then lo and behold, one of them becomes a vampire, becomes afflicted with this curse. So I thought it was great that you guys had so much focus on that film, Afflicted.
Yeah, it's a perfect example, I think, of when people were realizing that they could use other techniques from filmmaking, that they just, you don't just have to show a film camera running the whole time. They could incorporate editing if it was in the plot that they were editing the videos and they were putting out their own YouTube channel, and also like multiple cameras, so head camera, all this stuff, because they're filmmakers. And so I thought it was a great example of a film that did that wasn't just like a documentary crew going around documenting something. It was just these guys going on and filming their holiday, and they love filming. So, there's plenty of people like that. It was very believable, I thought. And also vampires are great. And people don't do vampires enough, I think.
And that is props to Sarah, because I had seen Afflicted. It came out at that time when there was so many found footage films. Even I was like, oh, there's so many, so many. And some get lost, and that was when I got lost on me. And so, yeah, when Sarah recommended it, I saw it, I was like, damn, yeah, that is how you make a found footage movie.
Yeah, everything about it, like I said, the acting, the creative process of putting him in that situation and showing like the evolution of him becoming a vampire on camera while they documented it. I thought it was great. Speaking of evolution, I'm thinking about the evolution of found footage, and I think it's a viable genre still. I think it's just only, stopped by the creativeness of filmmakers. Again, I was talking to David Bruckner and asking him his opinion about the future of found footage and if it's still viable. And he thought absolutely it was. And at one point he was attached. Paramount was looking to make a found footage kind of version, I'm sure you remember, of the Friday the 13th franchise. They were trying to find out a way that they could interpret the legend of Jason Voorhees and Camp Crystal Lake and all that, and incorporate the hot new trend of found footage. They never did it, but even though there was screen treatments written and they were location scouting, it just never came to fruition. Do you see found footage being incorporated into other franchises, or do you think it could work, or do you have hesitations? What do you think about that?
Well, it's definitely got life. I mean, it just evolves as technology evolves. So I'm sure there'll be a found footage movie that takes place in a Tesla soon, because it's just everything from the car is recording you, and
right,
which is kind of like dash cam, I guess, really. But,
yeah, that's free, I think.
Yeah, there will be something that isn't social media related, but somehow technology has evolved, and there's a camera in a certain place that can only happen in a found footage movie.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just don't think other genres have that built-in audience that the horror genre has. I don't think there's a huge demand by the comedy crowd for like a found footage comedy movie anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I just don't think it has the appeal. I mean, End of Watch drama, it doesn't really work when you're dealing with high-end actors. It just, you lose that believability.
Has there been one where you've got like a CCTV operator and they're seeing something happen, and then they're watching it from here and here and here, and then they see something? I don't know. Has that been done? I feel like that could someone do that.
There was a Norwegian film, I think, or a Danish film about a person in a control room, but it was more of a mix-up of him seeing what's on screen and him in the room. So nothing's done like a screen life version of that, but yeah, can be done.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's neat also, like I was watching, there's a movie, The Shallows, with Blake Lively. It's a shark attack film. A lot of CGI, a lot of beautiful shots, very high production value. But at the same time, there is an element to the story of found footage. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the film, But
Yeah.
okay, so like there's the divers, the surfers that have like the GoPro cameras on their head and they're catching themselves on the waves and everything when they're surfing, and then it captures them getting attacked by a shark. And she also uses the camera to kind of make a heartfelt message to her parents, her sister, that when she thinks she's going to die, and she throws the camera out into the surf. And true to form, it's footage that's found, which, spoiler alert for another 10-year-old movie, that found footage, which is shown in the movie, helps her get found and rescued. So I think there's like the evolution of incorporating some found footage, that shaky cam, the amateur level looking stuff into a high dollar, high production value Hollywood movie. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, there was go back to Jake Gyllenhaal again. Sorry, Jake, nothing against you, mate. I love you, really. But there was a film he did recently where he's just on the phone to people trying to find a woman who's been kidnapped. You've seen that one? It was on Netflix recently.
I haven't seen that one yet.
What's it called?
I can't remember.
I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I'll
That's
watch
very
that.
much that sort of like one location thing that feels like it could have been a found footage movie, where it's just him trying to find someone who's been kidnapped, but he doesn't leave the room. It's just him on the phone or speaking to people on like.
Oh my God, it's like Buried.
Yeah, except he's not on the phone in a coffin. He can walk around.
Save me.
I think it's stuff like that you can feel found footage influences in films like that.
Yeah, but big budget films don't generally want to look like they've spent loads of millions on their film,
exactly.
though, don't they? So apart from Cloverfield, and maybe Chronicle, and I think that they would maybe shy away from it looking too found footagey, unless it's a monster movie.
No, everybody can start filming it with their iPhones. And, that's everybody's got a high definition camera in their pocket now.
Yeah. Have you seen The Bay? Because there's a film called The Bay, which we didn't touch on, I don't think, at all. I don't think we showed a clip from it. But that is a film that shows one incident that happened in a bay, but from loads of different people's camera phones, or from the CCTV, and from, just like someone's home movie recorder, and all these different people that are unconnected, and how they saw the same incident. Just like it's like a database, a government database folder full of clips that people filmed what happened at the bay, and then it's all sort of put together. So that's sort of quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's during that really interesting time when big directors were dabbling in like the found footage format. So you had Barry Levinson doing that. You had Romero doing Diary of the Dead.
Right.
You had De Palma doing Redacted. Like all these big time directors dabbling with this low budget formula.
Yeah, sure. Now even Matt Reeves, who made Cloverfield, he's just did the Batman. So yeah, big time Hollywood director making, a found footage kind of a movie. And even like District 9, that had elements of found footage in there as well.
Well, yeah, it starts off like a mockumentary, right? And then just boom, becomes a big blockbuster type movie.
So how long did it take you guys to put together your show?
All in all, I think from first interview to finishing was about a year.
Yeah, probably. I think we started around July in 2020, right? And then we finished sort of July 2021. But that was like not non-stop, we were filming
in lockdowns, wasn't it? So it's like, pause.
Yeah, it really depended on, sometimes we got real lockdown again and we had to postpone interviews, and then like Oren Peli came on board really last minute. So I think we had it finished off earlier, and then we had to reopen up the edit to insert Oren Peli in. And so it took about a year because of that, but
that was worth it. Because when we started out, we need to get Ruggiero Diodato, Eduardo Sanchez, Oren Peli. And then by the beginning of 2021, we still don't have Oren. Do we have a documentary without Oren? And then luckily, I think it was the February, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. Yes. we now have a documentary.
It was exciting to have, and that door just shut behind you. Was that Paranormal Activity?
It was my girlfriend, but we'll say yes.
See, we're making our own found footage movie right now.
Yeah, what door?
That's right. I was, like I said at the beginning, I saw the press release. I think I saw it on Bloody Disgusting, and I'm like, wow, this looks so interesting. And I was so happy that you guys agreed to this interview and to chat about it. I love having creative people on. I love having people on that have like a vision of a story that they want to bring out. And I love it when I spend time watching something, and not only did I enjoy it, but like I said, I really learned. I thought I knew about found footage, and I really just had kind of a cursory knowledge about it. But for you guys to go through and like I said, starting with Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, and everything from there, from 1938 on, the 60s with Peeping Tom, which I need to watch. Just what a great showcase of a misunderstood genre. And I'm really excited that you guys agreed to chat with this guy in Omaha, Nebraska.
No, it's our pleasure. And we actually want to go a bit further, but again, it came into A, runtime, and B, is it pertinent enough? But there was early edits. We were dabbling with the real life horrors of like the 70s horror movement. Mm-hmm. So like stuff like Texas Chainsaw and Last House on the Left. It's like, yeah, it pushed realism into the genre, but it didn't pretend to be real. Although Texas Chainsaw did in a way. It was like you never believed it was truly like this was a bunch of people out in Texas with cameras filming footage. So yeah, we did have a bit more history that we lost because it just didn't tie in with the actual evolution enough.
Yeah, because a lot of horror sort of builds on itself, so it's quite hard. You have to sort of draw a line somewhere. You can't, because everything's inspired everything basically.
Oh, sure.
For sure.
And at an hour and 40 minutes, it's so well put together. But at an hour and 40 minutes, it's chock full of information, and it's very interesting listening to. I love listening to filmmakers talk about their reasons behind things and not justifying what they did, but talk about it and their thoughts behind it, and then their reaction to people's reaction to it. It's very interesting to hear the filmmakers talk about, making a film, releasing it, their thoughts behind it, and then having feedback from people and talking about what a cultural impact they might have made, big or small, with their movie. So very, very, very well put together. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And it comes out on Shudder on May 19th. So everybody needs to check out Found Footage Phenomenon. And what a pleasure to have Sarah Appleton and Phillip Escott here on the Necronomicast. Guys, now that you've got this project done and it's being shown on Shudder, you can kind of relax a little bit. What else do you guys got coming down the pike? What interests you, or what's something creative that you guys might be working on?
We have started working on a new documentary, but we're not going to tell anyone about it yet because it's a bit early. But hopefully it will be something equally as interesting.
Yeah, something as eye-opening and informative as the last one. That's the goal anyway. Eye-opening,
informative. I love it. Sounds good.
It's self-complimentary.
Very good. Very good. Well, yeah, I'll certainly be following your guys' career, and whatever you guys release out in the future, I'll certainly check it out, because I really enjoyed what you guys put together, and having you guys, what a treat on my show. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Brian.
Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Sarah Appleton and Phillip Escott. The Found Footage Phenomenon. Man, I really wish they would have made a Friday the 13th found footage. We talked about that a while ago, back with David Bruckner, Nick Antosca. That would have been a sight to behold. Much thanks and love to Sarah and Phillip for appearing on the show. It's a great show. If you get a chance, check it out. It's on Shudder right now. Coming up next on the Necronomicast, episode 225. Lord have mercy. the paranormal detective himself, Greg Lawson, is my guest. Greg has an amazing story. Military career, law enforcement. He's incredible. It's going to be a really fun conversation. Coming up next on the Necronomicast. Hope everybody's doing good out there. I'm doing great here in the historic haunted heartland of Omaha, Nebraska. Please leave me a review, if you would, over at Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like and subscribe. Buy a t-shirt. Help put my kids through college. Take care. God bless.